everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Sarah Kate and this is the 4th episode of our series, What is the Bible? In our last episode, we talked about writing as a part of the Bible and the invention of writing and how that impacted the Bible. This episode, we're going to continue with that. We're talking about the history of writing, the history of translation, and the beginning of where some of these early texts of the Bible were found. So let's jump in. So really this episode and the next episode, we're also going to be talking about writing, translation, and really we're talking about the composition of the Bible here. How we went from early Babylonian, Egyptian hieroglyphs to the NIV translation of the Bible. That's what we're working toward. But to understand how we got from the Greek and Hebrew writings all the way to the NIV translation, we have to first look at where the first writings were found and by whom. And we also have to look at original translation and understanding of the text and the physical writings that were actually preserved, those that we still have or that were originally found. To start with, way back in 1798, Napoleon staged an expedition to Egypt. AKA the French were trying to take over Syria and Egypt, but we're not going to get into the battles and the war part of this. The expedition at that time led to the discovery of the antiquities of Egypt. Napoleon and his team of scholars studied the pyramids, they studied the Great Sphinx, they studied the temples, and they were surveying the surrounding area, right? And during this expedition, they saw the hieroglyphs. These hieroglyphs written on stones or written on stone walls or written on monuments, they didn't know what any of those meant. They didn't know how to translate these hieroglyphs. And dun dun dun, eventually in a town called Rosetta, you know where I'm going with this. Rosetta is a town near the Nile. They found a piece of black granite, about 4 feet by 2.5 feet, about the size of a newspaper if you opened up a newspaper, okay? And on this piece of black granite, there were 3 languages written out. This is the Rosetta Stone. Okay, so on the Rosetta Stone, the top inscription are the Egyptian hieroglyphs that they did not know how to translate and did not know what they meant. The middle inscription was Demotic, which is a simplified Egyptian script, and the bottom inscription was Greek, which they could translate. So they worked on using Greek and the Demotic language to translate and better understand the Egyptian hieroglyphs. In the Greek part of the text, there was an indication of a decree given by Ptolemy. I'm going to put that right here. I don't really know how to pronounce this word correctly, okay? So this guy was an Egyptian ruler between 208 and 180 BC. So the people trying to translate the Rosetta Stone assumed that all 3 of these languages said the same thing in 3 different ways, 3 different languages. But they couldn't fully understand the Egyptian hieroglyphs. In other words, they couldn't decipher it as a language because they didn't know if the symbols were ideographic, meaning that each symbol represented an idea, or phonetic, which is like our alphabet, meaning that each symbol represented a sound. So, much later, 1822, that's some 24 years after the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, a guy named Jean-Francois Champollion, a French scholar, figured out that the hieroglyphs were both ideographic and phonetic. This happened all because Jean-Francois also studied the Coptic language. And the Coptic language is a liturgical language used by the Coptic Church, derived from Egyptian. That's how he was able to decipher each of the symbols used in the Egyptian hieroglyphs, what they meant, and that was the beginning of translation for the hieroglyphs there in Egypt. So what does this have to do with the Bible? The Rosetta Stone is not a translation of the Bible, and it is not the Bible. So what does that have to do with the translation of the Bible? Well, here you go. Around this same time, in 1835, so the translation that happened of the Egyptian hieroglyphs was 1822. 1835, there's a British general named Sir Henry Rawlinson, this guy. He found a text written 400 feet off the ground, huge writing, on a vertical rock wall about 200 miles away from Babylon. This text on this rock wall was made by order of King Darius in 516 BC. This is the same King Darius who rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem, and you can find that story in the book of Ezra. Ezra chapter 4 in the NIV version is titled Opposition to the Rebuilding. And so chapter 4 verse 5, they bribed officials to work against them and frustrate their plans during the entire reign of Cyrus, king of Persia, down to the reign of Darius, king of Persia. That's the King Darius we're talking about here. King Darius is the one who ordered this giant, massive text to be written on the wall. And like the Rosetta Stone, this giant, huge text written 400 feet above the ground also had, clearly, 3 different languages written together, 3 translations, 3 different languages of the same text. This time, we're looking at the Persian language, the Elamite language, and the Babylonian language. Okay, so we're talking about Babylonian here. We're talking about early ancient biblical texts written in the same era, Babylonian time period. So that's where we're moving toward the text of the Bible. So this really cool guy, okay, Sir Henry, great guy, look him up, he's pretty neat. Sir Henry started this process of copying by hand what was written on this wall. He did it using ladders and a pulley system from above, and it took him over 12 years to finish and complete the process. That is commitment. Many thanks to Sir Henry. Finally, after 12 years, he was able to decipher the Babylonian language. This achievement paved the way for translation of thousands of tablets found all over the ancient Near East, including collections of scrolls and parchment. So not just things written in stone, but also the beginning of parchment writing here. There were also this massive collection of scrolls and parchment found in Alexandria, Egypt. In fact, get this, okay, so we're talking about ancient texts found and collected all over ancient Near East. The Septuagint, okay, the Septuagint is I'm going to put that right here because I might be saying it differently than you have heard in the past.
Septuagint. Septuagint.
This is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. This was possibly made in Alexandria, Egypt, in the middle of the 3rd century BC. Probably in this giant, really cool library found in Alexandria, Egypt. So we have translated Babylonian language. We have collections of stones and writings. We have collections of papyrus. We have collections of scrolls, kind of scattered and spread out over the Middle East. A lot of them are in this ancient library in Alexandria, but there is bad news. The bad news is that in 645, the Arabs conquered Egypt, unfortunately destroying a lot of sacred texts and collections of books and scrolls and all these things that were collected there. The reason that they decided to destroy these texts is one of two things. Either, so they say, did these books, do any of these texts agree with the Quran? If so, they're superfluous. We don't really need them. We already have the Quran. If not, they are evil. And they destroyed them. Who knows how many things got destroyed when the Arabs conquered Egypt. Okay? But one of the earliest complete manuscripts of the Bible, discovered by accident in St. Catherine's Monastery, which lies in the shadow of Mount Sinai, and it was discovered in a pile of books that were going to be used, get this, for fuel for a fire. So we have whoever picked up this book and this collection of texts to thank for the fact that it wasn't completely burned. So this manuscript that was not thrown into a fire for fuel for a fire, but it was about to be, is called the Codex Sinaiticus. The Codex Sinaiticus. Here's that word in case I'm saying it wrong. And it's called that because it was found near Mount Sinai. So notice Sinaiticus. This codex, this collection of manuscripts, this collection, the earliest collection of books in the Bible, you'll never believe when it was found. Okay? It was found in 1844. 1844, you guys. That's only 177 years ago. And I know 177 years sounds like a lot, but think about it. That was in the history of time. That was not that long ago. Here's for reference what was going on in 1844, okay? The first electrical telegram was sent in the United States in 1844. The YMCA was created in 1844. The President of the United States is John Tyler in 1844. So, not that long ago. Now, I don't mean to say that this is the year that anything was found from the Bible. Now, we have earlier translations in 1844, but this was the first of the mostly complete manuscript, okay? And we're going to come back to the Codex Sinaiticus later on. We're going to come back to that in the next episode. We're going to end here by backing up a little bit, and we'll continue with this in the next session. But so far, we've discovered the text. We've translated some of the Babylonian language. There are collections and pieces of the Bible spread out along the ancient Near East. Now, let's talk about how we got 66 books of the Bible, what we have today. Where did they come from and how did we compile all those? So there are 66 books in the modern Bible, and these books are called the canon. These are canonical books. Canon here meaning rule or standard. As in, this is what the early church, the capital C church, not the UMC church, but the church in general, agreed on was a part of the holy word of God. These books of the Bible are formally accepted, and there was a whole process on what books should be a part of the canon and what books should not be a part of the canon. And there are other books of the Bible that we have. These books, you may, if you have a Catholic Bible, you may see a few extra books. And these books are part of the Apocrypha. Apocrypha here meaning obscure or secret. And the Apocrypha books are not included in the canon based on a certain criteria. And we're going to jump into this criteria in the next session. So next week we're going to go over the Old Testament and the New Testament canon and the early translation. And again, we're moving forward to how we went from this Babylonian language, understanding the codex, understanding translation, to what we have today, to maybe you have a King James Version Bible in your house, maybe you have NIV, maybe you have NSV. How do we go from there to now? That's what we're going to dig into next week. I hope you'll join along and follow along with me. If you like this channel or if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to the Virginia Wingard YouTube page for updates on these What is the Bible videos. See you guys next time and have a great weekend.